Hi guys, welcome back to another
Hi.
video. It's Marion and
It's
it's
Tara.
Tara, and it's definitely not 11 p.m. at night when we're filming. This week we interviewed Josefa, who is the founder of ArtSeed, which is one of the organizations we're working with. And they basically endeavor to connect the most vulnerable youth in the Bay Area with artists and mentors that can help them sort of hone their creative skills. So yeah,
And they have, at the minute, they have 3 main events that makes up ArtSeed. They have Artathon and a summer intensive, which is usually, pre-pandemic, was a 3-week program, which took kids in the Bay Area and taught them different artistic techniques and worked on projects and worked around like a complex theme every year. And open studios as well. They have an artist in residence.
They do an exhibition twice a year in this like shipyard that houses all of these kind of studios, and that just happened last weekend, so that was kind of what we were helping with, like moving the art there, talking to people at the open studios, which was a pretty interesting experience.
Yeah, it was fun.
So yeah, we just had a little chat with Josefa about her experience as an artist and setting up ArtSeed. I tried to give you guys the Zoomer, like, I have no attention span version of the interview. We talked for like over an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna try to give you guys like 28 minutes.
Put the headphones in. It's a podcast.
You know,
go for a little walk.
You can.
A little hot girl walk.
You can go on a hot girl walk. You could also watch us stare into the sun the entire time. It's literally up to you.
But it was a very interesting chat, and I don't know whether this will come across in the video or not, but I feel like this conversation had a profound impact on the both of us.
Yeah, like afterwards we were kind of like lost for words. I think especially like you gotta stick till the end, because that's like when
that's the tea.
She really,
the mic drops.
Yeah, I think, you know, she's a very interesting, kind of profound visionary woman, and has a lot of interesting ideas. So yeah, it was really cool. So we hope you enjoy. Bye. So hello everyone. This is Josefa. She is the leader of ArtSeed, which is one of the organizations we're working with while we're in San Francisco. And we just wanted to talk to you a little about your experience as an artist and as the ArtSeed leader and everything, and how that experience has been for you. So thanks for talking to us.
Thanks for being here.
Shall we start at the beginning? Like, how did you decide to start ArtSeed? What is ArtSeed, maybe for our viewers? And
Well, the mission of ArtSeed is to connect the most resourceful and gifted with the youngest and most vulnerable citizens of the Bay Area and beyond, through projects that explore relationships between classical art and the past with current events like social justice issues and cutting edge methods of and technologies of art making. So we try to connect the more resourceful and vulnerable, whether it's age or income, and also connect time-tested methods of and reasons for doing art, and try to notice how early masters, Western focused art, and now more of an awareness of non-Western art that goes back millennia is still relevant, and maybe even urgently so, more urgently so, as we come to grips with the current dilemmas. That it could be a path to solutions. And artists don't need to necessarily just be easel painters. that there are many things, I call them undercover art, that by going into various fields, other professions, they can use their creativity and their skills in ways that matter more than if they were to hole up in their studio. And
really
we've seen leaders who are writers, right, and poets, world heads of state that come from that background with great success, oftentimes.
So do you feel like the actual artistic techniques and methods are like an important part for enacting social change? Like those are the tools that artists can use, and therefore it's important to teach like the youth those techniques? Or do you think it's art making as
Like
a general process?
the empowerment that comes with like learning and building skills, or
So, if I understand your question, what is it that makes art making important for kids to learn?
And I guess specifically studying like classical works and classical pieces, like you were talking about.
Well, in any field, and that's one of the things that ArtSeed does, is it tries to not necessarily think about turning all kids into artists, but having them turned on to entering the working world and what it means to be a professional, what it means to be passionate and love what you do and be good at it, therefore, because you cannot be good at something you don't love. I mean, some people think they can, but it's not sustainable, right? They burn out. They burn out. So in that case, I would think, and that's what I got from my first teacher, free art lessons at the age of 11, Pilar Rubin, whom I just visited last week.
Really?
She's 94 years old.
Oh my goodness.
And still painting. Is not so much curriculum. I don't remember painting with her even. I don't remember at her house. I'm sure I did. But what I remember is just her passion for the profession and for the lens through which she could then see the world, and her confidence that I could embrace that and do something special with my life. So that sustained me through really tough times when otherwise I might have really faltered. I mean, my parents were old and ill by the time I was the last of 7. And so I had a sister only 4 years older than me who was my guardian. And she didn't get the support she needed, though she had a genius IQ and graduated first in her class. But she ended up 10 years in prison, you know, and she was my guardian. I could have followed on her path, but the art, I had the art that's sort of I turned to instead of other things.
And other mentors in your life to see you and help you cultivate your own.
I never lived with Pilar, but I knew she expected something of me. She was confident that I wouldn't throw away my gifts and that I would, and gave me enough skills and materials, tools. She gave me my first
physical
oil,
tools,
my first, thing. And so I was able to prove to those that would otherwise think I was just trash, that I had something valuable to give. I could make something of my life.
And was that your vision for ArtSeed then?
And
be able to pass that on?
Yeah, eventually my work followed from very conventional portraiture, and in Houston I had a following of people that bought my work that was very representational and very much about proving what I could do, showing my talent and my techniques, and I got to the point where I could pretty much paint anything pretty realistically without looking at a photograph. I just understood how light worked, and that was impressive, and I could do imaginative, more like surrealist things, and gradually got a commission to do a what was a mural, but it was 13 panels that I could remove and show elsewhere at the top of this oil company's fitness center. And it was at some point I felt like I was grateful that I could, actually earn. I think at those times it was like, oh, I could live off of $21,000 a year in those days in Houston. Wow, I can support myself by just doing. People will pay me to just paint anything I want. And then I realized there was more to art than that. That I hadn't gone to college. There was lots I didn't know about what art meant, especially 20th century art. At some point, I applied for a residency at the Dressy Artist Residency Program. I realized I need to get out of Houston and my comfort zone, and that would mean for some time not being with my son, who was still young, and his dad, but I had a pretty supportive community, and I realized I met people who challenged what I knew, who were impressed with what I had done, with what I had, but were, seriously, these were PhDs I was spending evenings with, and at the top of their fields of writing and dance and composer, and so they didn't let me go when I came home. They kept in touch, and I began to make work that was really, instead of referencing nature, referencing culture. That instead of how people look, I became interested in what people think. Like at a cocktail party, people say, well, so what kind of art do you make? And then I would say, what kind of art should I make?
Oh,
Here's my card. Draw me or tell me something that you think is worthy.
What kind of answers did you get?
All kinds of wonderful, wonderful images. But it started when I was working with kids in schools through the Texas Institute for Arts and Education, because kids kept giving me their art. Big. I was suspending it from my studio, and I realized I shouldn't even start a class without them giving me homework first. So they all got this card, this size, manageable, of what do you already know how to draw? What would you like to learn how to draw? What anything you want to ask me, and I'll go home, look through them, have a beer, kick my feet up, and really think about this,
Is that, in that way, you're kind of seeing the kids as your teachers in a
Yeah,
sense? And
so it's a two-way.
Does that still come into ArtSeed now today?
I made work, the last work I made in Houston was a big project that had a huge show and was reviewed in both of the main newspapers positively, called Kinder Signs, Cries, and Incentives. And what I did was I found reclaimed offset litho sheets, these aluminum sheets that they otherwise throw away when they print a newspaper or whatever. And I primed them and made them, edged them, and for taking those doodles and anecdotes and blowing them up as if they were symbol signs, the international red and white, yellow and black. And then from there, from that body of work, I had a trickle-down theory where I could make block prints, recombining some of those. But I would also use letraset, those rub-off letters, where I was reading the classics. My husband, whom I had married, said, Josefa, it's taken you a long time to say important stuff when you could just say Tolstoy. Or, people have come up with these ideas.
Yeah, you can just
and why don't you can, if you would read the classics, you can just point to an idea. And I started reading and my jaw is dropping. And I'm talking to everybody, War and Peace. Wait, has anyone really read this? This is subversive. This is like crazy stuff. And these are the classics. So I would take quotes from great minds in the classics from them and juxtapose it with a child's quote.
Oh, interesting.
So this authoritative verse juxtaposed with innocent.
Yeah, and
and
Yeah, I like that. Like you're putting them on the same level and giving the dignity to the child to say what they're saying is just as worthy and just as important as Tolstoy. Yeah.
And bringing that newness, that youngness back to the classics that have kind of molded in our experience of them. That how fresh. That's why they're classic. They're fresh throughout time. They're relevant throughout all time because it touches on something so basic, which children remind us of.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Then from there, from the prints, I saw there were 5 schools I was working in at one time, and each school had an exhibition. During my exhibition at the main alternative space, they had an exhibition of prints, block prints. And then from there, I made textless flyers with little tabs. You may have seen
Oh yeah, that you can take.
even smaller
Yeah.
images that I posted in the neighborhoods that had that composition, and laundromats and cafes and things.
Oh, wow.
So, and it had on each little tab a map of where the main show was, so that you could come, you could possibly come, but no other text. The idea of this trickle down, that art can be found anywhere, and it can lead you back to more conventional art spaces, but that it should be that.
It filtered into all parts of the community.
Yeah, that it should just permeate society, and not be secluded as art. That
It's integrated.
yeah,
and
totally
accessible.
integrated, and so that was gradually that kind of way of working. Then I started working when I moved here with other people. Nobody was getting back to me as a volunteer. So then finally I came up with an idea that I proposed as an artist to have a show. I had a show at the De Young where my troubled youth in the Western edition were actually in 13 weeks given a show. They were roaming the halls. They couldn't keep them and so I figured out a way that I could set the classroom up, and my assistants turned out had to leave. Tim Rollins of KOS was someone I admired in New York who'd really made a difference in the Bronx, and I called him on his cell phone. Many people didn't have cell phones back then, and I got him at a bar. And I said, I have had my first troubled youth class, and somebody got hold of the fire extinguisher.
Oh my gosh.
We had to evacuate the room. And I had 3 assistants. And he said, you have to fire your assistants. You have to be in that classroom by yourself.
Oh wow.
So
so you went in just solo.
So then I went in solo after the assistants helped me set the classroom up to where I never had to turn my back. And we figured out a way that we could, with merits and demerits, provide incentives for them to keep each other disciplined. They can compete. There are 2 teams, and certain ones were given a chance to teach what they knew, and we got them on board, and they became our show at the De Young, our installation, where they were monitors. People could come there. We had distinguished people from the community sit. We had oil painting. People who visited the De Young could oil paint in our studio, mock studio. They could do printmaking, drawing, and our students, our troubled youth, taught them.
Wow,
to
that's
do.
So
amazing.
coming back to like the child as the teacher.
I really like
yeah.
that idea.
Yeah.
What was the impact that you saw with those youth?
How
Well,
did you see
those
them
youth,
respond?
the exhibition was called ArtSeed,
Oh,
Roots of an Imaginary School. Fresh roots from an imaginary school. So they became the youth council. And then then we had a summer intensive.
Was this the birth of ArtSeed?
Yeah,
as it is today?
we had a summer intensive at their after school, and then we had a big show of their work called Gods and Monsters at Southern Exposure, the biggest nonprofit here. And I got a grant because at the DeYoung opening, 2 ladies came up to me and said, "What are you doing? We want to help you do it. What are you doing now?"
Oh, wow.
that's awesome.
And I said, "Well, I've been working with these kids, and we would like to do a summer camp." I'd done it through other organizations and got a little bit annoyed when they weren't set up to go pick up poor people who couldn't come. So that spot was given to, even though they got a grant to get poor people who couldn't pay there, that was given to someone else because they wouldn't go get the kid. Or they had leftover supplies and send them home. Anyway, I'll turn this off.
Oh, you're fine.
We
can
I'll integrate this. So
commercial break.
So they funded us. That was the Left Foundation. Oh, that's my husband. Do you mind if I answer it real
Go
quick?
for it. I'm gonna
For it?
pause.
Yeah, I can pause it.
Hi, Charlie. So I was also teaching at a private school called the Chinese American International School, and there was a man who called me who said, could his son be in my class? That he just heard great things about it, only his son was a little too young. And I said, well, what do you do? And then I realized he said he was a lawyer. And I said, well, I've been told I should start a nonprofit. Would you be able to be helpful with that? And of course, your son can come.
Make a little deal.
We started that process, but they didn't understand nonprofit, and they kept trying to put something in the bylaws saying that if you can give $30,000, you can be on the board of directors. And I said, no, that's not the way
Interesting.
nonprofits work. And I had to tell them twice in 2 drafts to take it out. So it took really 2 years to get our 501c3.
And how did you build that community of people that you were helping? What was your process in
Well, I
finding
got
the
a
people who
studio
needed
out
it
at
the
Bayview
most?
Hunters Point,
Yeah.
and then I also, the co-founder Marisa Kuntz, and I helped Heidi Harden, who had the Children's Mural Project out at Bayview. She works with hundreds of people on environmental projects, and they do tempera painting a very particular way. But she works with hundreds of people, and I thought, Marisa, we need to work with her and learn how to do that. So then they had a big show at the Bayview Opera House, and they had the parents came and they announced that summer there was going to be no money for arts in Bayview Hunters Point.
How come?
They had a budget cut, from the city because they were dependent on public funds. The budget cut, that was 2003. And I looked at Marisa, and I just, without even talking to each other, walked up on the stage and said, it doesn't have to be so. We can do a summer camp here. I think it was at least a month long. It was a long camp.
Do you think that kind of on a larger scale culturally more people kind of believe in the power of art to do that and to do that for kids, or do you think that's something you're still kind of pushing for people to realize? Because for example, like with budget cuts, it often seems like the arts are like the first thing to go. So do you think that kind of cultural shift is happening, or yeah?
I would have to say yes and no.
Okay.
We're at a scary time with divisions so deep, even within families, ideologically, at least in the U.S., but it's not only the U.S. And it's scary because we're talking the life of the planet, you know. All these social justice issues are impacted by climate change. And it's you know, the wealthy and privileged who will survive longer. And when it comes to survival, people have a hard time being in touch with their own conscience, right?
Yeah.
When you're survival,
Yeah.
and you don't want to be a minority if you're white. And in Texas now, whites are a minority. The same in California, actually. That spells civil war to some people because they think their survival is at stake.
Right, and it puts people against each other.
Yeah. And it's all about you and your type being ascendant.
And art is a way to hopefully like break down those barriers, would you say?
We have to reach for what Gertrude Stein used to call our bottom nature.
What does that look like?
She had a conservative nature, but she would say that okay, so we may not all be equal. I get it. She had servants. But that's finally not very interesting. And as an artist or a writer, you want to be interested. You want to be challenged. You want to think about an ideal situation and not just settle for what's so.
Yeah. Because art can be used as a way to imagine a better future.
It's
Would you say?
it's more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, nothing's going to work, no revolution, if it's not fun. You know? And I think folks in Ukraine are getting this. Some of them, reason they've lasted this long against Russia is that they have some kind of spark that in the Latin countries we call alegria, this joy. I'm gonna relish my challenges and whatever bit of life I have, I'm going to enjoy it. And they've had rave parties over there to clean up bombed out buildings, and they're partying and cleaning and dancing. They're saying, bring it on. You know, we're just gonna be like a roach, eat this poison up and thrive. So that's always been the mentality of, well, whatever life gives me, that's just grist for my meal. I'm gonna make something that I have fun with people. And
does that feed your art practice? I think
that's the only way it can, and that's why I've told artists, if you have a bleeding heart, I want to help people mentality, you will not survive and you will be boring. Nobody wants to help you. You have to be like Tom Sawyer painting the fence, and everybody wants to paint the fence with you because you're having so much fun. You know, and so I can complain about, all it takes to run a nonprofit, but that's counterproductive. I just have to figure out what really needs to be done and don't sweat the small stuff and focus on what I enjoy.
How do you, I guess, because I want to make sure you have time for your grant meeting, but I was going to ask, with that in mind, what do you envision for ArtSeed, and what do you envision for yourself as an artist in the future to come?
For ArtSeed, I envision others just taking it away from me, and away from me means that I get to have it without it needing me. I mean, I get to have it, and it doesn't have me, right?
Yeah.
So I can be there and be free to do the things only I can do. So that the future of ArtSeed will hopefully continue with that basic mission, connecting resourced and vulnerable, and earlier art, because great art is always relevant. And if you want to make great art, and that's all I care about, is I want to offer people a chance to be in art history, make history. Why not?
Yeah.
You know, I don't care about if it looks good over your couch or you know, I care about changing the world. Why not? I mean, that's the funnest thing you could do. And every little thing builds towards that. Margaret Mead, do you know who that is? A quote I ran across from her said, "Never underestimate the power of a small group of people who are committed to change the world." Because that's all whoever did.
Yeah.
It all started with
a seed.
Modest, modest people, unassuming people who
joining together.
who thought, well, why not? You know, why not make art history be more than being a rich and famous or darling artist? That you know, the founding advisor to ArtSeed was the greatest living art historian of his day, Leo Steinberg, and that was a close friend. And when I met him in '91, I thought, great, he'll help me be a rich and famous artist. But the more I got to know him and what real art does, and the more I researched the kinds of artists, like even the early 80s, I was interested in group material and artists who came out of school going to the Lower East Side of New York and starting a gallery, instead of showing their own art, knocking on doors and saying, what is art to you, of these immigrants, and putting that, and you know, to that's something more than, so so that was what our time calls for. You as an artist have to be in touch with your time and respond to what it's calling for out of you. And that's what every artist, that's what Michelangelo did. All of those people were doing radical things, and it's no different. And Leo Steinberg made that clear. And he was the one who I gradually realized had, you know, believed that there should be no children's art. There's only great art. And children can be involved in great art and making great art. It was that way in the Renaissance. That's why you had so many prodigies. They were expected. There was no children's art. They were expected to understand and help produce, and sometimes with the child labor issues. And that's why I go with mentorship now instead of apprenticeship. It has too much, you know, connotation of that. So, but for me, I want to be able to clean up and clarify what I've done so far. It's just like any other project. My art teacher, Pilar, sometimes mourns that I didn't pursue my own art, and people always ask me, have I done my own art? ArtSeed is my art. That is what I mean. That is like any other project. You gather, you hone, and you present. So I need time to gather, which is what I'm doing with Matt. He's helping me digitize my early work and the slides so that I can show in pictures and the story of how this evolves and make sense of of my life and make it so that when I'm no longer here, it's easier for people to use. There's not a lot of trash, not a lot to have to go
and
through.
to continue your legacy as well. To take ArtSeed
Possibly, but I mean, I'm also okay with it. You know, there may be an end game here, and I have distributed enough seeds to where it may not be claimed as mine, but I already know, and that's what's fun. I already know, and I'm constantly receiving ideas from people that it has mattered so far. So now it's just icing on the cake, trying to give people agency to use what is useful and try to find time to wrap up and make what I've gathered and created relevant for the future. People give and want to protect and sustain things that have a story they identify with, that matters.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell the story, it's just, you're just one of a lot of other nonprofits. But we have I think a special story, and I think it's not, you know, everybody always thinks, you know, that their story is unique, but it's gratifying to notice that it's not unique on the one hand, but it's also sad to think that what comes out of trauma and disadvantage is so prevalent.
Yeah.
But that means that good things can come from it. And therefore I feel obliged to try to tell the story so that others can see that your, you know, disadvantages, your trauma is grist for your mill. So how would you wind this up, this interview? What would you say for yourself that you'd like to do with your project and your life?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I feel like we're in the gathering stage.
Yeah, I was gonna say like listening would be my answer right now.
Absorbing,
Yeah.
gathering
from as many.
Every project works like that, right? It's comprehensive, and then you start to pick out
finding common threads and like common themes. Yeah, but this was really, really cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Welcome. Thanks for making the opportunity. It helps me to kind of gather my thoughts and part of the project. Goodbye, everybody. Yeah, if you'd like to get involved with ArtSeed, you can go to www.artseed.org. That's ArtSeed.org. And there's where you can click a little button to send us any extra pennies you got, or get involved, and you don't have to be in the United States even. We've worked with people, especially during COVID, around the world, and so there's always something one can do. Maybe start your own chapter somewhere.
Yeah, very inspiring.
Thank you so much. Hi guys, it's us again. We hope you enjoyed this video. We're gonna be back again next week with our reflection vid.
Yeah, a 1 month reflection vid.
So
we've been here, almost a month now, which is crazy. So we'll try and be as honest as we are legally allowed to.
As
much as Mr. Golfman allows us to.
We've signed some NDAs. We're not allowed to disclose everything. No, you don't want to miss that one. It's gonna be juicy.
Yep.
I'm tired.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to sleep. But thanks for watching.
Love you guys. Bye.